What if death is not the end, but the beginning? Today, you will hear the incredible story of Rosemery Thornton, a woman who survived 10 minutes of clinical death. What she saw and felt beyond life shocked her and forever changed her understanding of death, pain, and the very meaning of existence. Stay with us until the end to learn the amazing truth that could change your perception of life and death. This is the story of Rosemery Thornton, a woman who lost everything, only to find something greater, a truth that changed her and can change you. Rosemery was a successful author who dedicated her life to researching old houses and architectural history. Her days were filled with interesting work, client meetings, and the inspiration she drew from her profession. But behind the outward harmony, she hid her most valuable treasure, her family. She loved her husband, saw him as her support and inspiration. But one day, her life was shattered. The sudden death of her husband threw everything into disarray. His passing was unexpected and painful. It wasn't just a loss, it was a blow that knocked her out of her usual world. Grief consumed her, drowning her in daily memories and pain that seemed endless. After her husband's death, Rosemary's life turned into an endless string of days filled with pain and emptiness. Her home, which once felt like a cozy haven, had become a place full of memories, every corner reminding her of who she had lost. She couldn't walk past the table without remembering their dinners together, couldn't go to sleep without feeling the cold emptiness. Every morning began with a heavy heart that didn't ease by evening. Rosemery tried to keep working, meeting with people, but her smiles became a mask hiding her internal struggle. She avoided friends, not wanting their sympathy. "How are you holding up?" they asked, and in response, she could only nod, unable to find the words. The hardest part was dealing with the guilt. She constantly asked herself, why didn't I notice he was suffering? Why couldn't I prevent this? What did I do wrong? These thoughts haunted her, turning her pain into an endless torment. But most frightening of all was the future. Without her husband, she felt lost. Who was she now? What lay ahead? This feeling of emptiness and helplessness became her constant companion. 2 years later, still not having recovered from her loss, her health began to deteriorate. At first, it was just fatigue, which seemed to persist even after rest. Then came pains that grew stronger. Rosemery thought it was a result of stress and tried to ignore the symptoms. But one day, the pain became so intense that she couldn't bear it anymore. She saw a doctor, who ordered a series of tests and examinations. Soon, she was called in for a consultation about the results. She remembers sitting in the doctor's office, surrounded by the cold light of lamps and medical equipment. The doctor entered with a serious expression, and before he could say anything, Rosemary's heart sank. "You have cervical cancer," the doctor said. These words hung in the air, freezing time. She looked at him, but his voice became muffled, as if he were speaking from a distance. Her mind was flooded with thoughts. Cancer? This can't be real. After everything I've been through, this is unfair. She felt her hands tremble, her chest tighten, and the world around her seemed to collapse. Fear gripped her, and tears welled up in her eyes. But she couldn't cry, she was too stunned. The doctor continued explaining what steps needed to be taken. He spoke about treatment, procedures, and chances. But for Rosemery, these words blended into a single hum. All she could think was, am I going to lose this too? Is this the end? Rosemery returned home, consumed by her thoughts. She sat in her favorite chair, staring into the emptiness, and for the first time in a long while, allowed herself to cry out her pain. She didn't know how to move forward. It felt like her world was falling apart, leaving nothing but ruins. This news forced her to face the most frightening reality, the fear of death. She had already lost a loved one, and now it seemed she was losing herself. But deep inside, despite the fear, something new began to emerge: determination. Determination to fight. "I can't just leave like this," she said one night, looking up at the stars through the window. "I must find meaning. I must fight, not just for myself, but to prove that life doesn't end as long as we breathe." With this decision, she went into the procedure, unaware that it would mark the beginning of a journey that would forever change her life. When Rosemary decided to undergo the medical procedure, she knew it was her chance for salvation. The doctors explained that it was necessary to address complications caused by her condition and reassured her that it was a routine operation performed regularly. She tried to calm herself, repeating the doctor's words, "The risks are minimal." But deep inside, fear still gripped her heart. On the day of the surgery, Rosemary arrived at the hospital early in the morning. The white walls, the smell of antiseptics, and the soft murmur of nurses' footsteps heightened her anxiety. She filled out the last documents, sitting on a hard plastic chair, her fingers trembling slightly as she signed the consent forms. In the operating room, everything seemed so sterile and orderly. Surrounded by medical instruments and professionals in white coats, Rosemary felt small and vulnerable. Her heart raced as the nurse helped her onto the operating table. The light above her head was blinding, and she closed her eyes, trying to focus on her breathing. "The anesthesia will take effect now," the doctor said, his voice soft but professionally detached. The last thing she remembered was the cold metallic taste on her tongue and her body slowly sinking into unconsciousness. When the surgery began, everything proceeded as planned. The doctors worked diligently, discussing each step. But after a while, something unexpected happened. A heavy bleeding began. "She's losing blood," one of the surgeons said loudly, his voice cutting through the silence of the operating room. The monitors started emitting alarming sounds, signaling a drop in vital signs. The doctors quickly responded, but the bleeding was so intense that every second counted. "There's no pulse," the nurse said, checking her wrist. A tense silence fell over the room. The doctors immediately began resuscitation efforts, doing everything they could to bring Rosemary back to life. These 10 minutes were critical. Adrenaline, defibrillation, drugs, the medical team was doing everything possible. But it seemed that her body was no longer responding. For the doctors, it was a fight for her life. For Rosemary, it became a moment of transition. While her body lay still, her soul embarked on a journey she could never have imagined. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, her heart began to beat again. "We've got her back," said the doctor with relief, watching the monitors stabilize. But for Rosemary, everything had changed. When she regained consciousness, she realized that her experience wasn't just a random event. It marked the beginning of a new path, a new understanding of life and death. The operation had become not just a medical procedure, but a portal to something greater than she could have ever imagined. When Rosemary's heart stopped, her consciousness detached from her body. It happened suddenly and quietly, without fear or pain. Her physical body lay still on the operating table, surrounded by doctors and medical instruments, but she found herself in an entirely different place. The first thing she felt was an incredible calmness. Pain, anxiety, and the weight of the past, all disappeared. She felt an extraordinary lightness, as if her soul had been freed from everything earthly. It was a feeling she had never experienced before. She was surrounded by light. It wasn't ordinary light, like from the sun or a lamp. It was something alive and all-encompassing. It was soft, warm, golden, and it seemed to penetrate her very being. This light didn't just illuminate her, it embraced her, soothed her, like a loving parent. Rosemary felt that she wasn't alone. Before her appeared a being radiating incredible love and kindness. It was something she couldn't describe in words. She didn't see its face, but she knew it was a divine presence. It knew her, everything about her life, every joy and every sorrow. "You are the image and likeness, I am the original," the figure said. These words resonated deeply within her, like a profound truth she had always known, but only now understood. The feeling of love was indescribable. It was unconditional love that filled her with peace. Everything she had ever feared seemed irrelevant now. Rosemery also sensed the presence of other beings. These were angels or spiritual guides. They were filled with joy, their energy radiating support and welcome. She felt as if she had returned home, to a place where she had always been awaited. She understood that death was not the end, but a return. Her earthly concerns, losses, and fears now seemed so small and temporary. Her true essence was connected to this light, to this peace, to this eternal home. But even in this place of peace, she realized her journey was not yet complete. She was shown that her earthly life had meaning, and that every action she took, even the smallest, was part of a greater plan. "This is not your end," came the message. She felt she had a choice, to stay in this place of love and peace, or return to the world full of pain and challenges. Rosemery thought of everything she had left behind, her friends, her family, her mission. She realized that her work was not yet done. Despite the desire to remain in this place of light, she chose to return, to continue her work, and to share what she had learned. Her near-death experience was not just an event, it was a message that she had to share with others. She realized that death was not the end, but a transition. And most importantly, there was nothing to fear, because beyond this reality, love and acceptance awaited. When her soul began to return to her body, Rosemery felt a sense of completion and peace. She knew that this journey had forever changed her life. The first thing she felt upon returning was the cool air filling her lungs again. Her body seemed heavy, almost motionless, as though she was sinking back into a complex mechanism that had not worked for a long time. She opened her eyes, and slowly, the faces of the doctors and nurses appeared in her field of vision. The bright light of the operating room blinded her, and it took a moment for her to understand where she was. "She's back," one of the medical team exclaimed. Their voices were filled with a mix of relief and amazement. They began checking her pulse, breathing, and other vital signs. But for Rosemery, those words sounded distant. Her mind was still full of memories of the place she had just visited. She felt that her heart had filled again, not with fear or anxiety, but with new knowledge and profound peace. "Something has changed," she whispered as the nurse covered her with a warm blanket. Her body was weak, but her consciousness was clear and full of energy. She sensed that her perspective on everything had changed. The worries that had once filled her life now seemed so insignificant compared to what she had just experienced. When she fully regained consciousness, she was moved to a recovery room. Lying on the white sheets, Rosemery stared at the ceiling, trying to find the words to describe what she had just gone through. The next day, the doctors delivered surprising news. Further tests showed that there was no trace of cancer in her body. This was a medical miracle that no one could explain. For Rosemery, it was confirmation that her return was not accidental. However, the greatest miracle was her inner healing. The deep pain that had gnawed at her heart after losing her husband had disappeared. In its place came a feeling of peace and love. She understood that she no longer feared either life or death. Her return to life was not just a physical event. It was a new beginning, a chance to live with full awareness and to fulfill the mission she had brought back from the other side. From that moment on, Rosemery knew her task was to share this experience with others. Her return was not a coincidence, and she decided to live her life in a way that would allow her to become a light for those who fear the darkness. After Rosemery returned to life, her existence took on an entirely new meaning. In her heart, she carried a deep understanding. What she experienced on the other side was not just an event, but a calling that now defined her path. She returned with a message that she could not keep to herself. At first, she continued living as before, but with each passing day, she grew more aware that her story needed to be heard. She felt that her mission was not only to share her experience but to help people understand that death is not the end. Her vision of light, love, and divine presence had transformed her view of life. "I no longer fear," she would say, describing her feelings. The peace she brought back from the other world became her inner anchor. She realized that her purpose was to show others that the fear of death can be overcome and that beyond this world, there is not darkness, but infinite love. She began writing. At first, it was just personal notes that helped her organize her thoughts. Then, as her confidence grew, she realized these notes could become a book. Her book, Remembering the Light, How Dying Saved My Life, was her attempt to convey to others what she had learned after going through clinical death. "I want people to know that they are not alone," she said in interviews. Her story gained power, inspiring those who were on the brink of despair. She reminded them that every life has meaning, that every suffering is temporary, and that beyond this world, something great and infinitely loving awaits. But her mission wasn't just about words. Rosemery sought to help others through action. She began participating in events where she shared her story, answered questions, and comforted those who had lost loved ones. People found not just hope in her words, but clarity, a sense that they were connected to something greater than they could imagine. Rosemery particularly reached out to those who feared death or believed their lives held no purpose. She would say that each of us is part of a grand plan, even if we cannot see it right now. "We are all connected, and every act we make matters," she repeated again and again. Her words, backed by her experience beyond, carried a special weight. Her new mission also involved helping those who had lost loved ones. She knew what it was like to live with the pain of loss, and she wanted to give people hope that those they lost were still safe, surrounded by love. Rosemery became not only an author and speaker but also a kind of mentor for those searching for meaning in life. She helped them find peace in the knowledge that their lives mattered, that every good deed, every smile, or act of love was part of the eternal light. Her mission wasn't easy. At times, she felt weary. Sometimes she asked herself, "Can I really share everything I saw and felt with others?" But in her heart, she always heard the words from the divine being, "You must be a light for others." Each time she saw how her story touched people's hearts, how her words helped them find peace and hope, she understood that her mission was being fulfilled. Since then, Rosemary's life became a reflection of the light she had seen. She knew her work was a reminder to people that they are never alone, that love is always near, even in the darkest moments. And most importantly, each of us can be part of that light by simply offering kindness and care to others. If this story touched you, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to stay updated on more inspiring stories. Share this video with your friends, because stories like these can change someone's life. Remember, you are important, and your light can make the world a better place.